Hi, my name is Matthew Saunders. I'm the VP of Project Management at NTEN Design Group. I serve on two 501c3 boards. One is a charter school in Adams 50 in the state of Colorado, and the other is on the Drupal Association, which is the nonprofit board that supports the Drupal project worldwide. I've been involved in the technology and nonprofit sphere for about 18 years altogether, both on the nonprofit side, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but also on the vendor side. For me, the Drupal project really has allowed me to merge things that I love: process, technology, nonprofits. NTEN Design Group, who I work for, is thrilled to be a sponsor here, it's events like this that really give people the opportunity to collaborate and communicate, and it makes for a richer ecosystem for all of us to work within. So I thank you all for attending. NTEN is focused on working with companies that do good work all around the world. Our core values include a strong desire to affect positive change in the world. To this end, we work with groups like Pointer, the World Resources International, World Bank, Stanford University, Results for Development Institute, Knowledge for Health, the World Wildlife Fund, and Colorado Public Radio. And a few of those groups I'm going to be talking about during my talk today. So I'm presuming that the reason that you all are here is because you're trying to choose whether you should use Drupal or not. And there are a lot of common reasons that people talk about: that there are no licensing fees, none, never; that the code is community driven; that open source and nonprofit philosophies often align; and that once it's set up, it's highly manageable by non-coders. These are just a few reasons that it's attractive, but it is astonishingly powerful. It scales well and has a massive supporting community of developers, project managers, designers all around the world. And they're all giving their time away for free to produce this amazing product that you're able to use in your sites. We're going to discuss a few themes today, but one of the threads that's going to be common throughout them is cost, speed, and quality. So, because I'm assuming you're all here to talk about Drupal, I'd love it if a few of you could share with us how you're using it now or how you hope to use it. Anybody want to volunteer? No? Really? Come on. So let's try this a different way. Put up your hand if you're using Drupal now. Okay. And put up your hand if you're trying to figure out how to use Drupal in your organization. Cool. All right. So I'm going to tell 7 stories, and hopefully these stories will help you in terms of your own journey. And the first story I'm going to tell is how I decided I was going to adopt Drupal, and then I'm going to go through 6 different organizations. If you want to grab a slide, copy the slides. They're available at bit.ly/uppercase NT story. It is case sensitive, and I'll give you a second to write it down if you want to. So hopefully by the end of this discussion, you'll have a good idea of why Drupal is a great choice from a product standpoint, but also you'll have a clear idea of the wide variety of different applications that you'll be able to build out of Drupal, or you could build from Drupal. All right, story number 1, a nonprofit administrator's journey. So I didn't come to this naturally. I have a BA in studio arts with a minor in theater, and that made me uniquely unqualified to talk about technology and nonprofits. It was an awful lot of fun to do, but really wasn't the end place in terms of my career. I decided that I'd get a certification in nonprofit administration from the University of Ottawa in Canada, which is the reason why I can talk to you a little bit about the nonprofit world. But that went on for me to do my MFA at Virginia Tech, and I focused on nonprofit administration with a concentration in technology. And that was when nobody was really focusing on those kinds of things. It was back in 1995 that I did that work. I ended up working for the Western States Arts Federation as Senior Director of Technology, and one of my duties was as grant administrator for the organization. So I learned an awful lot about grant making, both setting up panels and running grant programs and sitting on panels and so forth. And I did that work for about 8 years. That tenure included building a bunch of different systems. This was between the years 1999 and 2007. And it included building registries for artists, writers, performing artists, helping support a job board that was built from a paper publication originally called Art Job. I was the chief architect in a grant-making system that was adopted by agencies all across the country. I was chief architect building a system for adjudication for artists, both in the festival circuit, but also for public art programs across the country. And there was a common theme across all of these projects. They were really, really hard to build. The reason is that back then, there were no frameworks, or at least none that were worth looking at. So everything that you built was from scratch. I would spend weeks upon weeks upon weeks building database structures in spreadsheets and trying to explain what that meant to stakeholders, and building wireframes and trying to explain what a wireframe was and how it was different from design, and all of those are still very common issues that folks have. But fundamentally, when it came down to building these things, you had to build everything from scratch. I like to liken it to being told that you need to build a car, and then being shown a mountain and saying you got to get your own ore out of the mountain, you have to smelt it, you need to build all the parts yourself, and then you need to build the car. So in those days, you really were building things literally from the ground up. And when frameworks like Drupal came along, it was more like having a kit car, where you get all the parts and you'd snap all the parts together, and more or less, when you finished building your kit car, you had something that would work. I had no idea at the time, though, that Drupal existed. And I had no idea at the time that really all it was a conception of a graduate student in Belgium, in his dorm room, who was trying to set up a system whereby his friends could share an internet connection and decide what they were going to do that weekend. While it was open sourced in 2001, it didn't get any kind of significant traction until 2003 and 2004 during the Dean Space campaign, when it really exploded. People started noticing Drupal left, right, and center, and it started to actually get traction. In 2006, I participated in 2 workshops. One was on just sort of general trends on the web, but there were 2 guys there, and they were both working in the Drupal sphere, and they invited me to come to another Drupal training in Vancouver. And for me, that was a seminal moment. My head exploded because I realized that I would never, ever, ever, ever have to build another user authentication system. I wouldn't have to figure out how to deal with permissions. That all of this was built into a system already, and that I could reuse it over and over and over again. And I came to the conclusion that I could save nonprofits many hours of development work. A 2,000-hour project might actually only take 500, 600, 700 hours, which at the time was a game changer. It was a massive shift in the way people were thinking about how to build these systems. But at the same time, I knew that if I was going to have that kind of impact, I was going to have to change the game for myself, that I was going to need to be in a position where I could throw the net way wider than I ever had before. That meant that I was going to need to leave one nonprofit in order to serve a bunch of different organizations. And in 2007, I transitioned to working in a boutique shop in Boulder that focused on building cool things in Drupal for other groups. So what you can take away from this is that Drupal is transformative. Its power can be leveraged by individuals, small organizations, and large organizations. All right, my second story. How many of you are involved in education? Learning management systems, are you using them at all? No? Is it something that you've been thinking about and how it could be made use of in your day-to-day work? Okay. So there are systems like Moodle out there that's open source that people are using, and other systems similar to that. But what we'll talk about right now is doing it in Drupal. NewsU is the largest online training platform for journalists in the world. It has roughly 130,000 active users. The NewsU catalog offers faculty-led online group seminars, self-directed courses, webinars, and other web-based formats like that. And there are new courses that are being deployed to the system on a monthly basis. When Pointer came to us, they had a mixed system with a proprietary LMS at the center of it. And what this meant was that that users who came to the system would have to go to a bunch of different places in order to get the materials that they needed for a single course. What they wanted to do was take all these disparate pieces, pull them into a single system that was cohesive and clear. The challenge was that there were a lot of people who had been using this group of systems for quite some time, and they're comfortable with it. They liked it, and there could be a fair bit of resistance to them shifting from an old system to a new system. So the plan was we're going to do early prototyping and migrate content over really, really early, and even in a rough form, we're going to allow people to start using the system really early on and keep the original system running in parallel. So for a time, we were developing the system here, people were using it, and the old system kept on running on its own engine until we were at a place where we felt that the switchover could be completed. The trick to this project wasn't even any of that. It's that Pointer wanted to white label this system as well. It wanted, once it was built, to be able to offer it to lots and lots of other organizations who didn't have the time to build a custom system themselves, but wanted all of the bells and whistles and energy that gone into a custom system available to them immediately. So we needed to build it so they could spin up new systems quickly, rebrand them, get content in them, and have them available for these other organizations. So what we can take from this is that Drupal can be used to build things like a Moodle-like system, learning management systems, and that you can create software as a system, software as a systems that can be licensed as services. So again, what we're talking about here is flexibility. Story number 3. How many of you have events in your organizations? Do you have registration for those events? Do people pay for them? Do you do these? Do you do the registration and payment online? And is it a proprietary system, or is it a system that you've built yourself? Proprietary, put up your hands. System that you built yourself? How customized are they? Are they customized at all? Do you wish they were? Okay, let's talk about building an event site fast. We worked with the Alumni Association with Stanford University, and it was on a program called Connects. They have events scheduled throughout the world, doing seminar series with well-known speakers, and this compelling set of events were scheduled in such a way that they wanted releases of web elements each time an event was released. So they'd have pre-event, event, post-event for each of these, and there needed to be a web presence for each of these. Stanford Plus Connects aims to bring the very best of Stanford together from all over the world, both physically and online. They needed a custom registration system and a payment system that could handle commerce from all over the world, because they wanted to be able to do their registration in local currency from each one of the cities that they were engaged in. There really wasn't something out there that would do that out of the box. So we used two things that Drupal has already, a system called Drupal Commerce and a system called COD. COD is the Conference Organizing Distribution. And we mashed those together with some common Drupal modules that are used to build sites, to build something very quickly. So the registration system also needed to hook into Stanford's central postgrad system. So when somebody registered, their information from postgrads would get pulled into Stanford, into Connect itself, and that information could be surfaced in interesting ways on the site, because one of their goals here was to produce collaboration, communication between alumni as well as alumni and the Alumni Association. So they wanted people to be able to see who else was going to be at the events that they might know or might want to know. So part of this goal was to give the experience of Stanford after their tenure as a student was complete, but also to allow those who couldn't attend to attend the event to have a taste of what these events were like. It was about maintaining a connection between the alumni and the school. So the original system was needed pretty quickly. How quick would you guess when they came to us? They said that they needed to have it done. 2 weeks, a little longer than that. 6 weeks. We had 6 weeks to build it. So what we did was we used these these commonly available elements, and we put them together in a single system. We used just a titch of custom code to allow for multiple currencies in a single commerce system. And then spent the rest of the time building a beautiful interface that was intuitive for users. Currently, we're adding a video platform to extend the system, so they'll be able to search through like videos, that kind of stuff. So what you can take away is that Drupal can be used very quickly to create complex systems. And that by using Drupal's contributed modules or code, they work like Lego. They snap together, and in general, they'll work quite well. So if you've got an idea for a system, a lot of it can be done without a developer. A lot of it can be done by somebody who just knows how to cleverly put together existing code that's out there for you to make use of. Story 4. How many of you are engaged in grant-making activities? Okay, good. And how many of you have applications for things like fellowships and stuff like that? Okay. All right, so let's talk about applications. The National Center for Women in Information Technology Aspirations in Computing program honors young women for their computing-related achievements and interests. These are high school girls that they're targeting. Each year, the award process recognizes hundreds of high school girls for their computing and IT aptitude, leadership ability, academic history, and plans for post-secondary education. Highlighting these girls and their accomplishments on the Aspirations website provides them with national exposure. When Aspirations came to us, they showed us their application, and their application was, if you were to put it onto into a single piece of paper, was about this long, and was a single form. And it was a variety of radio buttons that that girls would check that would say, you know, how good they were with open source products, what their GPA was, what level they were in high school, you know, stuff like that. And then there were a number of essay questions that they needed to include as well. And what the Aspirations folks said to us was, well, here's the problem. the girls can't save their form, and they have to do it in 45 minutes. And what that meant was the girls were looking at the form, often printing it out, so they had this much paper, and then answering all the questions offline, and then coming to the form and frantically trying to get through all of the elements of the form before they got timed out and had to start all over again. So what we did was we moved the content from the old system into a new system, and we built a full-featured application and adjudication system and support platform for the girls, coordinators, volunteers, reviewers, teachers, and parents. And the way that the system works is that when a girl fills out her initial form, she has to get permission from her parents. They're all minors, so they have to have permission from their parent to participate in the program. So the system would then email the parents, tell the parents to come back, give the girl permission, and once they had permission, then they could fill out their application, and at some point it would ping an educator that they'd indicated had to endorse them, to go to the site and fill out an endorsement. And once all of that was done and they hit submit, then it would go into a queue, and their applications then would be divvied up amongst adjudicators all over the country who would do a blind adjudication of all their work. Now, the adjudication was built into two different methodologies. The first was completely objective, so all of their questions that could be scored based on their answers would be accumulated and put into a single set of scores. And then the objective parts would be scored by these adjudicators. And to make things absolutely fair, they'd make sure that the girls were adjudicated by no fewer and no more than 3 adjudicators. So they would have hopefully an entirely objective view of their application. The system also needed to set them up in a local competition and the national competition at the same time seamlessly. And the system needed to add them to their local community where they could communicate and work with other girls. So the idea was not just to have the girls apply for these awards, but also build communities around where they lived. Some of the specific goals that we addressed was to expand the program to include middle schoolers and women in IT careers, to provide access and more opportunities and resources, and to improve the application process by having this autosave, breaking the pages out into questions into multiple pages, and to do this whole business of adding to the regional community during registration. The system's very much like a grant application and a jurying system, and greatly simplified the process for girls who wanted to participate, and increased participation in the program by 30% in the first year after it was put into place. Really, at the end of the day, though, this is all about encouraging young women to take up roles in information technology, become leaders, and mentor other girls. So what we can take from this is that Drupal can be used to create incredibly complex forms with workflows that include bits and pieces from many parties. And Drupal can be a grants management system or an application system. All right. How many of you listen to your local NPR affiliate? And you do it on the radio, probably, most of you. Do some of you listen on the computer? Great. And do any of you give money to your local affiliate? You don't. You should. If you use it, you should pay for it. What we're going to talk about next is streaming, fundraising, and the APIs around streaming and fundraising. So we worked with Colorado Public Radio. And they had a fragmented user experience across its different offerings. News and the CPR site itself were on one platform. It was a proprietary platform. and it was legacy. And then their OpenAir, which is their new music platform, was built in an old version of Drupal. Then their classical station had absolutely no web presence whatsoever. And what they wanted to do was take all of these elements and pull them into a single unified experience. They also wanted a unified player that was persistent and would play across whatever program they were working across. They wanted to tie into multiple APIs for playlists, membership drives, and calendars. And they wanted the user experience to be clean and intuitive. And that wasn't just all, if that wasn't just it, they also needed a system on the back end that would allow for collaboration for editorial submissions of work. So they wanted a full editorial news system on the back end. Effectively delivering end-to-end audio to users was critical for the CPR redesign. So we worked with CPR to craft a solution that's seamless, persistent, and context-aware, providing an uninterrupted listen experience as users navigate the website on every single modern device. Most players, when you make use of them, aren't really persistent truly. So when you start listening to your local affiliate on your computer and you hit play, what does it do? Does it open up a separate little radio box? Right, and that sort of sits in the background, which is the reason it is persistent. So when you're on your main page and you're going from page to page to page, the music or the news isn't being interrupted. It all plays in a single way. What you'll see on this screenshot is that the player's at the bottom, and that player floats up and down when you scroll on the page. And when you go from one news article to another news article that you're reading, the player doesn't stop playing. It keeps on going without having to sit in the background. This was really important to them. The e-membership system needed to allow for donations to be made directly on the site, but it also needed to tie into their legacy system. The reason for this is that all of their incentives were driven through this legacy system. So when you know that you're going to get a coffee cup for your $60 donation, that needed to show up in the widget. If they had a sweepstakes going on to go to Italy, they wanted that to be showing up in the widget. But more importantly than that, when that sweepstakes or incentive ended, they didn't want it still sitting on the site. They wanted to disappear immediately, right at the moment that incentive ended. And that's a lot tougher than it sounds, because on a modern website, the way that you make things go fast is you create flat HTML copies of that dynamic page that are served up, so you're not hitting the database, so things go quickly and snappily. But that doesn't work very well if you need something that has to be updated on a second-by-second basis, and that's where APIs come into play. It also needed to be able to display how close we were to goal on a fund drive near completion. And across all of that, they wanted it to look good on tablets and on mobile phones. So the audio player, like the rest of the CPR.org design, is responsive. It adapts to various display sizes, leveraging the unique qualities of each. And for older browsers, the player degrades gracefully. So what I want to show you here is if we go back to this original player, you'll see that to go to News, Classical, or OpenAir, that's all along the bottom. But if we then want to do this on a tablet, it slides over on the side, so you've got this whole player available to you, and it's making the best use of the tablet space. And when you're on your mobile phone, it pops that up to the top. So again, you're making most use of the available space that you've got. What we can say about this is that Drupal can be used to behave as a streaming player for live audio. That Drupal can connect to other systems using APIs, application programming interfaces, to pass data back and forth in a seamless way. And this is really, really important because this will make both systems behave in a way that neither system on their own could behave. And then finally, on this one is that Drupal can be gorgeous, can look great across all devices, even on a single site. Okay, the next story is called Saving Through Replication. The next group, they are a large organization, but they've got affiliate organizations all across the world. Do any of you have affiliate organizations that have their own sort of local flavor and their own presence? And yeah, good. And do they each have their own website? And do you wish that the are the websites different than your parent website? Do they look different and feel different? And is that what you want? Or are you looking to be dealing with a situation which is a little bit more cohesive across all the properties? Okay. So what we're going to talk about in this next story is how World Resources Institute was able to do this really cost effectively. We're going to talk about the Institute and one of its programs called Embark. WRI is a global research organization that works closely with leaders to turn big ideas into action to sustain a healthy environment, the foundation of economic opportunity and human well-being. And Embark is the World Resources Institute program for sustainable transport and urban development, operating through a global network of centers in Brazil, China, India, Mexico, and Turkey. Embark has built its global recognition on its local experience, helping to improve quality of life in cities worldwide. So WRI had a site when they came to us, but what they wanted was something that was really beautiful, intuitive, and also could pull all of the resources that they had accumulated into a single system. So we needed to migrate a bunch of content from their old system into their new system and surface it in ways that was intuitive and useful for people who wanted to make use of their data for advocacy purposes. Not only that, but they wanted to repurpose the main site so it could be deployed across 8 other regional sites in the future. And each of these other centers had their own content owners, their own content, their own languages. And if you recall the Embark folks that I talked about, Brazil, China, India, Mexico, and Turkey. Not all of these sites use Western characters. So that was another challenge that we had to have in mind. We had to take the original concept and lead that single project into this deployment. And then we made 2 copies of the original deployment. Keep in mind that we had already been thinking about how do we do this in Chinese? How do we do this in Turkish? How do we make this work with multiple languages on a single site, as opposed to just a single site? And once we created 2 more copies, we started on a dual track development because Embark wanted a different look and feel from the main WRI look and feel. They had their own branding. They have their own way that they want to do things. But we had to do this all cheaply, or relatively cheaply. So this is what the Embark site looks like. These 2 sites, you can see how they're maybe structured pretty similarly. But the user experience is quite different. By structuring the app, and this is a little bit of scroll down on the Embark site. By structuring the effort to be repurposed and then deployed to 8 centers, each center after the main WRI site was deployed enjoyed a savings of over 72% on their sites per site. And that was even with these significant changes to the look and feel for about 60% of the sites. The other piece of it was that they needed they're now poised to be able to deploy additional sites in other languages, not just the ones we talked about, but additional sites very, very quickly. We could do it in a matter of days now with either of these two looks and feels, which again, as you can imagine, crunches down those costs even more per center. So what this demonstrates is that Drupal is flexible. And that flexibility can provide amazing savings when approached creatively. And just the simple change of the look and feel of a site can radically alter the user experience. All right. How many of you have causes? All right, come on. You all have causes if you work for a nonprofit. When you're dealing with causes, say fundraising, I'm assuming you use your causes to get people to give up their money, right? You do. You gotta. Do you ever use data to support those assertions? And that data, is it simple to get out and produce materials for? Sometimes kind of tough. The deeper and wider the data is, the more and more difficult it becomes to surface that data and make compelling arguments. It becomes spaghetti, and that becomes tougher and tougher and tougher when you're trying to take that data and use it for multiple arguments across multiple different kinds of causes. We're not going to talk about fundraising, but we are going to talk about how you can use data for causes and how the WWF has been doing that. We're about to launch a site for them called Supply Risk Analysis. The World Wildlife Fund is the leading organization in wildlife conservation and endangered species. The fund has an existing tool in Microsoft Access that maps a variety of risk factors across countries and commodities. So we might be looking at soybeans in China, or coffee in Brazil, or palm oil in Ecuador. And what they've done is they've taken these different commodities and looked across 30 or so different risk factors and mapped how good or bad each one of these commodities is to the local environment on an economic basis, on a physical basis, on a wide variety of different ways. The challenge right now is that with the Access database, only one person or two people or however many people in that local office can get at the data, can add data to the system, and can generate reports. And of course, the reports are limited by what Microsoft Access can spit out. The WWF needed an attractive web portal that could speak to potential consumers, and to managers at companies that might want to make use of this data. So what Atten Design Group did was build in Drupal a system to surface the fund supply risk analysis methodology. This powerful tool helps organizations assess risk both on a natural and economic environments by looking at the impact different commodities have in their production. The framework covers around 30 broad topics, from CO2 emissions to depletion of biodiversity to labor rights to water use. And then we surface that content, that data, in such a way that it becomes really clear where businesses can have the biggest environmental impact, or where they're looking at the biggest potential risk of sourcing commodities in specific locations. And for businesses, this helps them determine priorities. They can decide, is the environment important to us, or is making money important to us? Is our corporate reputation going to be affected by buying this commodity from this particular source? What would happen if this information got out to the world? So the WWF can help big corporations become better stewards of the environment by understanding the impact that their actions are taking on the environment. It takes into account. So this is a screenshot of one of the analysis pages, And each one of those donuts shows the relative risk in different colors. And when you mouse over those relative risks, it takes the data points that are in the database, pulls them up so you can see them. The engine behind it is extraordinarily complex, and it elegantly surfaces conclusions based on these objective data points. But it also surfaces narratives, stories that people who know a lot about each one of the data points have entered into the system. So you not only get the raw data that is surfaced elegantly, but you also get the stories that support assertions. The system also needed to take all of this and pull it into beautiful PDF reports that could then be used as advocacy tools as well. The process of reviewing these risk factors and narratives couldn't just be done by a single person, though. We need multiple people to assure the veracity of this data. Make sure that nobody can come and say, "Come on, guys, who double checked these data points," because that isn't true. They want there to be an incredible amount of authenticity and accuracy in everything that they put forth. So there's a complex workflow that's been put into place that has people checking and rechecking and double checking, and things can be kicked back to people to review and rewrite if need be. If we scroll down a little bit further, you can see a little bit more of how this looks. Sort of at a single view, you can get a sense of different risk factors and how risky they are or not. And then we get down into narratives around each one of the elements. So what we can say about this is that Drupal can be used to expose incredibly complex sets of data in intuitive, readable ways. And that Drupal can utilize complex workflows when systemizing processes is critical to making sure that people can believe what it is that you're telling them. So to recap, we looked at the realization that Drupal can be transformative. Its power can be used by all kinds of individuals and groups, regardless of size, budget, etc. Drupal can be used to build many different kinds of systems, and they can be anything from learning management systems to conference and event systems to granting and award systems. It can be used to support streaming players, to connect systems to others, to enhance a user's experience way beyond anything that Drupal itself could do or the other system could do. It's flexible, and used creatively can save you tons of money. It can be used to surface complex data in intuitive ways. And finally, Drupal can support complex systemization of workflows. I hope that my remarks have been helpful, or at least interesting. And I thank you for all of your attention and sticking it out with me. And if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to chat. And I'm also going to be here for the rest of the conference. So if you want to talk about anything Drupal, just tap me on the shoulder. Yes, sir. So, sure. So we've got a support program that I think starts at 8 hours a month, and for almost any client, 8 hours is going to provide enough time to do minor updates to the system. That would be functional updates and any upgrades to Drupal and the contributed modules that need to be made for security purposes. Yeah, but those range from 8 hours to some groups that want to continue building things, and they can, they may use hundreds of hours in a month. Yeah. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that you spent the time with me today, and I hope you have a great conference.